Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever and wherever you're watching or listening. This is the Stochastic NHL DFS Strategy Show, and I am your host, Michael Clifford. It's a weird time of day for a lot of people, I take it. 9:45 a.m. here, 8:45 a.m. Eastern. We're doing this early just because there's an NFL show starting in a little over an hour. And this afternoon, I'm traveling to go visit family for the holidays. So this seemed to be pretty much the only time we could reliably get it done. So early show. Obviously, we're not going to have a lot of information right now. We do have a few starting goalies. There's some teams that played last night. Goalies started last night, so we have a good idea where some of the goalies are. We have a good idea where some of the lines are. You know, there might be some injuries or things that pop up through the day. As always, it's why we say check the Discord. Before we get too deep, do have to shout out Clayton. He had a 1K takedown in the single entry last week, and then he had another 1K takedown over the weekend. I believe this was Saturday night. Calgary 163. Michael Backlund had that monster game for the Flames at low ownership. So that was two takedowns in 4 days, I believe, for Clayton. So congrats to you, Clayton. Do love to see it. Nice little boost to the bankroll before the Christmas break here. And yes, this is the final show before the holiday break. The NHL goes on a 3-day pause, so there's no NHL on the 24th, 25th, 26th, back on the 27th. 12-game slate here tonight. Should note that the slate locks at 6:30 Eastern because they included the early Dallas-Detroit game. So 30 minutes earlier than usual for the slate locking. So just keep that in mind when you're building your lineups. Shout out to the projection people at Stochastic. They got the projections for the NHL up earlier this morning for us. We do have some top stacks. We do have some projections. We do have some stuff to go through. So because the NFL is starting in a little over an hour, or the NFL show, I should say, we should probably get right to it. First, a $2 super chat for the coffee and sun lotion fund for Cliffy, for Podegen Stoner. Certainly appreciate it. Always in the chat, throwing out some picks for people that might do some betting. Really appreciate the support. Happy holidays, man. Thanks for the super chat and good luck tonight. All right, let's just jump right into it. These implied goal totals are calculated by me, so they might be a little bit different on the site, or a little bit different if you grab them from somewhere else. But here we go. First game up is that early game. The Dallas Stars have a 3.2 total. They're going into Detroit. Detroit has a 2.9 total. Now, Dallas did change up their lines a little bit last game, so we'll see if we get anything from Morning Skate from them. But Matt Duchene was on the top line with Mikko Rantanen and Wyatt Johnston for the most part. And then we had Maverick Bourque with Jason Robertson and Rope Hintz. Detroit top 6, status quo from the last few games with no Patrick Kane. All right. I did make a little spreadsheet here with some of the key lines. Now, Detroit isn't coming in with that much ownership. I found that interesting. Detroit won here. Larkin, Raymond, Finney, 17,500, 7% top 2 stack, 3.4% ownership. That's positive leverage on a mid-price line, mid-ish price line that has been good, scuffling a little bit of late. Dylan Larkin, no assists in his last 10 games, but he's got 4 goals. Needs Finney and Raymond to start putting the puck in the net. I don't mind Detroit one here, in a nutshell, but this is a 12-game slate. Like, there are a pile of lines between that, let's say 16 to 18K range. Like starting at 16K and going up to 18,006, there are 15 lines in that range. Do you have to run out to play Detroit 1 facing one of the top teams in the NHL? Not perfectly correlated and not scoring super well of late. I mean, I don't think so. They are playable. I'm not necessarily running out to play them here. Detroit 2, kind of the same story. They're obviously a little bit cheaper here. DeBrincat, Kopp, and Leonard, 14,300. They're kind of in that weird spot at 14.3 where, you can pair them with one of those 17K lines if you want to play an expensive defenseman or something like that. I'm not super high in Detroit here. The Dallas side is somewhat interesting. for a few reasons. One, we know how good the Dallas power play has typically been. The other is Detroit doesn't really take a lot of penalties. They're at 2.4 per game over the last 5 weeks. It's the sixth lowest rate in the league over the course of the entire season. They have the fourth lowest penalty rate in the NHL. So, Dallas's bread and butter, especially for DFS this season for the top guys, has been that power play. The Dallas top line with Matt Duchene there, 56 shot attempts, 2.5 expected goals per 60. It's not really that good. Like, Duchene has gone through some injuries this year. He's not hasn't really looked himself, if you want to say that. So I'm not super in on the Johnston and Rantanen line. Robertson, Hintz, and Bork, on the other hand, we have them listed as Dallas 1. They're 17,200, 3.9% top 2 stack, 1.6% ownership. The key there is that I think Detroit is going to be sending out Larkin and the Moritz Seider pairing against Johnston and Rantanen. So you get the Robertson and Hintz line going out against the depth pairs from Detroit. That's not a bad matchup. On a slate this big, playing an uncorrelated line on the road, I don't think you have to. If I were to play anything in this game, it would be that Robertson Hintz line, only because I do think they avoid the Seider pairing at 5-on-5, and Detroit is a completely different team defensively, i.e. much worse when that pairing is off the ice. So for me, the only thing I really have interest in this game for single entry is Robertson, Hintz, and Bork. But again, make sure you check warm-ups or pre-games or morning skate to see if those guys are skating together. All right, let's move along. Our next game, Montreal, 2.8 total. They're going into Boston. Boston has a 3.1 total. Couple lineup notes for the Habs here. Philip Deneau, he got traded to the team over the weekend. He's expected to be in Boston to meet the team today. Whether he's actually playing or not, I guess we'll find out probably in the next couple hours. I assume he is, and if he is, I imagine he goes to the second line and he changes up that line. Maybe he goes down to the third line. They leave Kapanen, Demidov, and Slavkovsky together. I think no matter what, even if Deneau is in, that Suzuki, Caulfield, and Bolduc are going to stay together. Over the last 12 games for that Montreal top line. Now, remember, we talked over the weekend, I think it was in Thursday show or Saturday show, how once Montreal got home from that Western swing, that top line really started cooking. Their last 12 games for Montreal, which is since they got home from that West Coast swing, the top line, 67 shot attempts, 4 expected goals for per 60 at 5-on-5. Caulfield has 0 goals in his last 5 games, but he's averaging 1.6 expected goals per game or per 60 minutes in that span. So they're creating quite well. And these guys are not coming in with any ownership here. See Montreal 1, Caulfield, Suzuki, Bolduc, 4.2% top 2 stack, 1.7% ownership at 17,200. 2.8 total. It's not massive. The bonus here is all the penalties that Boston takes. Boston over the last 5 weeks, 3.6 times shorthanded per game. It's the second most in the league behind the Kings. Over the course of the season, 3.7 per game. It is the most in the league. So Boston, one of the most penalized teams in the league. Montreal's top power play, scoring 14.8 goals per 60 minutes. Now, they're doing that shooting 33%. I don't think they're going to keep shooting 33%. That is pretty obscene. But we see how well that they move the puck around on the power play. If Montreal gets 4 or 5 power play opportunities here tonight, that could be good, very good news for the top line. If you want to take out Bolduc and put in one of Slavkovsky or Demidov and make it more of a power play stack, I think you can do that. I don't mind Montreal 1 here. I'm not worried about any of the matchups from the Boston side. Boston's top line, if you look at Pasternak and Pavel Zacha, in their time without Elias Lindholm, 3.4 expected goals against per 60. The second line of Lindholm and Geekie without Pasternak, 3.3 expected goals against per 60. No matter who goes out from that top 6 against Boston, they've been struggling defensively, and they take a ton of penalties. Now, Jeremy Swayman has been great, arguably one of the best goalies in the league this season. That's one thing that gives me hesitation, but I do like the matchup for Montreal 1 here. On the Boston side, Like, I think Boston 1 is playable here only because Pasternak has finally gotten away from Elias Lindholm. Like I said on the weekend, that guy's just a boat anchor. He doesn't help anybody offensively. Pasternak and Zacha, haven't had tremendous offensive numbers together this year, but they have been good together since Zacha got to the Bruins. Pasternak, 3.4 shots and 1.2 points per game over his last 10 games, skating nearly 20 minutes a game. They're not super expensive either, which is kind of the bright side here. Boston 1, Pasternak, Zacha, Middlestat, 15,600, 3.3% top two stack, 4.9% ownership. They're in that price range where you can play them with another 15 or 16K line in case you want to fit in like Cale Makar or Quinn Hughes or something like that here tonight. That's the line I would play. I would not dip down to Boston 2. Any line with Elias Lindholm on it is really a line that I don't have a ton of interest in. So for me, it's Boston 1 I have the most interest in on the Boston side, but it's Montreal 1 I have the most interest in this game. Just beware of any line changes. We'll see where they decide to slot in Phil Deneau. All right, next game. Moving right along here. Florida, they're going into Carolina. Florida has a 2.4 total. Carolina has a 3.5 total. Carolina obviously going through some pretty key injuries right now. Seth Jarvis, who knows what happened? Kind of looked like he might have broken a rib or something crashing into the post, but he's out. Jordan Martinook out. Jacob Slavin out. So Carolina, at the very least, is down their best defenseman and their best winger. That's a pretty significant hit to their depth. I was looking at Sebastian Aho's numbers this season without Seth Jarvis on his line. 67 shot attempts, 2.6 expected goals for per 60. That's really not that great. The upside here is that even if Carolina does that thing where the power play starts with Jordan Staal, Stahl's probably going to be replaced by Nikolai Ehlers as Jackson Blake takes Seth Jarvis's spot. So the top line of Aho, Ehlers, and Blake at 16,400 is going to be perfectly correlated in some sense on the power play. 9.6% top two stack, 11% ownership, so a little bit of negative leverage, but they do have a fairly sizable total. They are a fairly sizable favorite here tonight. And in the last game without Seth Jarvis, these guys all skated roughly 19 to 21 minutes. That has typically been one of the problems with Carolina here this season, is that, Aho might get 19 minutes, Jarvis 19 to 20, but then the other winger gets, 15 or 16. The guys on the second line get 15 or 16. Like, this top line might all skate close to or exceed 20 minutes here. That's a lot of ice time for a perfectly correlated top line at 16,400. It's not as if Florida has been great defensively this season, and it's not if the goaltending's been great. Florida does take their fair share of penalties, so while Carolina power play hasn't really been that good this year, it's still a perfectly correlated top line that's going to get a lot of ice time and is priced very reasonably at 16,400. Of all the lines priced under 17,500, they have the highest top two stack. I do think that's pretty notable here. I do like Carolina 1. I do think missing Jacob Slavin hurts, but they still have their puck movers, right? They still have Gostisbehere, they still have Walker, they still have Miller, they still have Nikishin. So they still have their puck movers on the blue line. I think that losing Slavin is just going to hurt them more defensively than offensively. Obviously, losing Jarvis hurts offensively, but they still have more than enough talent on the wings to help out Sebastian Aho there on the top line. So I really do like Carolina 1. If you want to dip down to Carolina 2, play Stahl, Svechnikov, and Stankoven, I think they're playable just because of the price, right? Svechnikov, Stahl, Stankoven, 13,500, 1.4% top two stack, 1.3% ownership. Maybe they get a little bit more ice time because of the injuries. So Stahl 16 minutes, Svechnikov, 17, 18, maybe something like that. I think that's the best you can ask for. I noticed that Svechnikov has 1 goal in his last 14 games, despite averaging 2.8 shots per game in that span. I don't want to say he's due, but I kind of feel like he's due. As a filler, I think they're fine. But with the rate that Florida takes penalties, like Florida 2.9 times shorthanded per game over the last 5 weeks, that's about league average. But that's pretty much about where they've been for most of the season. or most of the last 6 weeks, sorry, over the course of the season, they're the 4th most penalized team in the league. So even if Carolina's power play is not great, if they can get like 3, 4, 5 opportunities, all they need is one, then they get an even strength goal and you're in business. So I do like Carolina 1 here more than Carolina 2, despite Carolina 2 having a reasonable price. Florida 1 is fairly interesting for me on this slate. They don't have I guess we should call them Florida 2, Marchand, Bennett, Verhaeghe. 17,900, 5.9% top 2 stack, 2.5% ownership. Now, they are perfectly correlated on the top power play. Florida's top power play unit, a little bit better than league average, despite shooting under 11%. I think the league average shooting percentage at 5-on-4 is about 13%. So they're better than league average by scoring with a worse than league average shooting percentage. And it's because they generate so many shots on the power play. Carolina's penalty kill has been getting better as the season gone on, but it's still not anywhere near elite as it's been, over the prior few seasons. Carolina is not taking many penalties. That's the one thing that kind of hurts here. But, no Jacob Slavin is a big loss for Carolina. We have seen them be fairly leaky defensively this season, giving up a lot of rush shots against and things like that. If you look at Sebastian Aho's defensive numbers without Slavin on the ice with him this season, 2.6 expected goals against per 60, 3 actual goals against per 60 minutes. That's over the last 2 seasons, sorry. This season, it's 2.8 expected goals against, 2.7 actual goals against. It's still, well below average defensively. It's not a bad matchup for that Florida top line. And Florida, I call them the top line, the Bennett line. That line's at 3.9 expected goals for per 60. They're perfectly correlated. Bennett has 37 shots and 13 points in his last 10 games. If I was 20 maxing here tonight, I would absolutely have at least one of that Florida Marchand, Bennett, Verhaeghe line. Single entry, I think it's more of an open question. They do have a fairly low total on the road on a 12-game slate. It's that line that I like best. I hate leaving Sam Reinhart off a stack. So if you want to take off Verhaeghe and put in Reinhart or something like that, I think you can do it. You want to just make a Florida power play stack, add in Reinhart and Jones. I think that's playable as well. I like Carolina 1 best in this game, but it's that and the Bennett line I think are both very playable regardless of format. Once you get to 20 max, I think you really do have to consider the Florida side here. All right, moving along. New Jersey Devils going into New York to face the Islanders. New Jersey has a 3.2 total. Islanders have a 2.6 total. Jack Hughes came back on the weekend. A little bit of a surprise. It feels like that's a little bit early, but nice to see. No Bo Horvat again for the Islanders, and Ilya Sorokin also not playing tonight. It'll be David Riddick starting for the Islanders. I think it's going to be Jacob Markstrom starting for New Jersey, assuming that they go back on that rotation. But, we'll find out here probably in the next hour and a half. For me, not really a ton of interest on anything from the Islanders side. Like, if I were to play anything from the Islanders, it would be that top line, I guess, quote, top line for New York, the Anders Lee, Matthew Barzal line, Lee, Barzal, and Simon Holmstrom, 13,600, 4.4% top 2 stack, 10.1% ownership. I mean, listen, Barzal's been playing a ton of minutes without Horvat, like around 23 minutes a game. Obviously, him and Anders Lee have good numbers together this season. 65 shot attempts, 3.3 expected goals per 60. Barzal has 11 points in his last 10 games. They're playable. They're just coming in with a lot of ownership, ownership over 2x, their top 2 stack. I think they're playable. They're the only line that I really have any interest in on the Islanders side. I have no interest in going to the Drouin, Heineman, Pajot line. So for me, it's Islanders 1 or bust on the Islanders side, but super chalky Islanders without Bo Horvat with a 2.6 total on a 12-game slate. It's one of those things where there's just like 3 or 4 red flags popping up, and it's probably going to keep me away from the Islanders. The question is what to do with the New Jersey side. Because that New Jersey top line, of Hischier, Meyer, and Bratt. 18,600, 5.6% top two stack, 2.1% ownership. Obviously, not much ownership at a very reasonable price. Not perfectly correlated on the power play. If they go back to Stefan Nason power play one as they did in their last game, that is what kind of hurts here. I hate paying 18,600 for an uncorrelated line, but especially on a 12-game slate. But I think it's doable here for this reason, is that the Islanders don't take a ton of penalties. Over the last 5 weeks, the Islanders are at 2.2 times shorthanded per game. It's the second lowest rate in the league. They're better than league average over the course of the entire season. Now, the New Jersey power play, 9.8 goals per 60 with Jack Hughes in the lineup. The Islanders' penalty kill metrics are still pretty bad. It's just their goaltending on the penalty kill that has kind of kept them afloat. But obviously, with Ilya Sorokin not starting here tonight, it's a different story than with David Rittich starting. Rittich has been the better goalie on the PK this season. I would have to think over the course of a full season, Sorokin would outplay him. But the Islanders really have been relying on their goaltending on the penalty kill. It's one of those things that tends to regress. We've seen that with the Sabres recently. I would be tempted with New Jersey one. I hate making a stack and leaving Jack Hughes off of it. That's just kind of the problem that I have here is like, how do I play New Jersey going up against a team that doesn't have a very good penalty kill, at least as long as their goaltending isn't giving them 9-10 penalty kill save percentage, and leave Jack Hughes off of it. So, if you want to take off Meyer, put on Hughes, it makes it a really expensive stack, but it's certainly going to be unique. Not really worried about any of the matchups coming back from the Islanders. Even that Barzal top line with Anders Lees at 2.7 expected goals against per 60, that's worse than league average defensively. So, I'd be tempted to go Hischier, Bratt with Jack Hughes. If you want to just play the New Jersey top line, I think that's fine. Don't really have any interest in dipping down to New Jersey too. Hughes doesn't really have great numbers without any of the big boys, like without Meyer, without Bratt, without those guys. So for me, it's either New Jersey one or like Hischier, Bratt plus Hughes or something like that. Going to be honest, not a game that I have a ton of interest in. It does have a 6 total, but it's leaning under, broken power play correlation lines. Neither team really takes a lot of penalties. Neither team really draws a ton of power plays. So on a slate this big, if we're talking 7 or 8 games, I think it'd be a lot more of a conversation. On a slate this big, I think we can just pass. But again, what I do like best is the New Jersey side pretty easily in this game. It's just a matter of how much do you want to pay up for them because, especially with Hughes and Hischier being a double center, you add in Jesper Bratt at lines 21,400. You're basically paying Edmonton, Colorado prices. Just go play Edmonton or Colorado. That's just kind of the way that I look at it. People may feel differently, but not a whole lot of interest for me from that game in general. So let's move along. Let's get to the Buffalo Sabres with a 2.6 total. They're going into Ottawa. The Ottawa Senators have a 3.6 total. Ottawa's top line, Zetterlund, Stützle, Tkachuk. It's been really, really good. 87 shot attempts, 4.2 expected goals per 60. Zetterlund playing around 16 minutes a game. Tkachuk, 18 and change. Stützle over 20. Tkachuk, 4.7 shots, 1.2 points over his last 10 games. Notably, they do get a lot of depth matchups. So, you're going to see a lot of that Ryan McLeod line or whatever from the Buffalo side, which has been a just horror show defensively this season. Buffalo's penalty kill has also been on a slide. Remember, we talked about how Buffalo's penalty kill had started strong this season, but it was on the back of a very high save percentage. Well, guess what? That save percentage has started to come down. Over the last 5 weeks, it's down to 980, which is still good. Don't get me wrong. It's still top 10 in the league. But it's driven their goals against to right around the middle of the league on the penalty kill because they do give up so many shots. We know how good Ottawa's power play can be. Ottawa draws a lot of power play opportunities over the last 5 weeks, 3.5 per game. It's the third most in the league over the last 5 weeks. Over the course of the season, they draw the 5th most power plays per game. That Ottawa top line isn't perfectly correlated, which is the one thing that kind of sucks. Dylan Cousins is kind of being a power play merchant this season. Now, he's only 1,300 more expensive than Zetterlund. So if you want to go Tkachuk, Stützle, Cousins, that line's still under 20K, which I feel is pretty reasonable, considering the huge total, considering it's a good power play matchup, considering the ice time that Stützle and Tkachuk get, considering the offense that top line has been able to generate. If you want to just play the top line and then add in Cousins or something like that, if you want just Ottawa power play stack, I think that's doable as well. I really do like the Ottawa top line here. I always hate when I really like Ottawa because sometimes they can struggle to score a 5-on-5. But they have been really good on the power play. It's a really good power play matchup. If they get a ton of power, if they get 4 or 5 power play opportunities, they have a real chance of burying Buffalo here tonight. So I do like the Ottawa top line. You want to dip down to Ottawa 2. Go play Batherson, Cousins, Perron, 14,100. 1.3% top 2 stack, 1.1% ownership. I think that's playable. And, if you want to take out Perron, put in Tkachuk, or take out Perron, put in Stützle, and make it more of a power play stack in that direction, I think you can. I think that they're fine as kind of like a cheap midline stack or an expensive filler. Depends how you want to look at them. But it's the top guys that I really do have a lot of interest in. It's Tkachuk, Stützle, Zetterlund. And like I said, if you want to take off Zetterlund and throw in Cousins or something like that, feel free to do so. It's a really good power play matchup for the Sens. On the Buffalo side, Buffalo technically has 3 playable lines. But when you have a 2.6 total and 3 playable lines, you have 0 playable lines. It's kind of the way that I look at it. The McLeod line hasn't really been doing anything. The McLeod, Quinn, Benson line. If you do want to go and play the Tuck, Norris, Ostlund line, 12,800, 1% top 2 stack, 1.5% ownership. They're going to avoid the shutdown matchups from Ottawa. So that means not seeing Jake Sanderson, not seeing that, Giroux shutdown line or whatever. So they're not in a bad matchup. And, you get Norris on the power play. Tuck typically plays a fair, high teens for minutes. I don't have a ton of faith in them here tonight. Ottawa is a really good defensive team. If I were to play anything from Buffalo, it would be that Norris, Tuck, Ostlund line for 12,800, just because they're priced as a filler. You get Norris on the power play, and Buffalo's power play has been really good as long as they have Josh Doan on the top unit. 12.9 goals per 60, 10.6 expected goals per 60, generating well, scoring well. They are drawing more power plays of late, better than league average in that sense. So where they avoid the shutdown matchups, Norris gets the power play time, Tuck gets a good ice time. They're priced as a filler. I think Buffalo 2 is okay. For me, they're more of an MME play. To me, this game is all about Ottawa 1. So Ottawa 1 / Ottawa power play is where I'm going in this game. All right. Moving along to game number 6. We had the New York Rangers going into Washington. The Rangers have a 2.1 total. Washington at 3.2. Listen, I don't really have any interest in the Rangers here. Because Zibanejad and Artemi Panarin, 235 minutes this season without Adam Fox on the ice, 2.4 expected goals, 2.3 actual goals per 60. The Trocheck line, or just Trocheck, I guess, in 290 minutes without Adam Fox, 2.2 expected goals per 60, 2.1 actual goals per 65 on 5. Just bad offensive numbers, like well below league average. Without Adam Fox, how much the power play struggled without Adam Fox. Like maybe they'll be better with Scott Morrow. We do need to see a bigger sample, but they're probably facing Logan Thompson for the Caps here tonight. That's not ideal. Caps have been taking fewer penalties of late, about league average, which is an improvement for them. I don't know. I'm pretty much out on the Rangers. they have a very low total on the road on a 12-game slate facing Logan Thompson with a bad power play, and they don't draw very many power play opportunities anyway. The Rangers drawing the fewest power play opportunities per game over the last 5 weeks, the fewest power play opportunities per game over the season as a whole. So a team that's not drawing any power play opportunities, that's not creating well, that is below average at 5-on-5 without their top defenseman facing Logan Thompson on the road on a 12-game slate. That is just pass for me. Question is what to do with Washington. Because I do think Washington has two playable lines here. They're relatively the same price. Wilson, Strome, Protas, 15,700, 4% top two stack, 2.7% ownership. I think that's very playable here. You do get Wilson and Strome on the power play together. I was looking at Wilson and Strome's numbers together this season. Like, they haven't played a ton without Alex Ovechkin, only about 50 minutes, but 58 shot attempts, 3.6 expected goals per 60. Wilson can push 20 minutes a game, Strome 18, 19, something like that. Protas has, I think it's 5 goals in his last 12 games or 10 games. So he's been scoring. Not really concerned about, I don't really care which matchup they get, whether it's the Rangers top line or the Rangers second line. I certainly don't mind Wilson, Strome, Protas here. If you want to take off Protas and put on Ovechkin, make it more of a power play stack, I think you can do that. But, Washington's power play is good, not great. They don't draw very many power play opportunities, 2.6 per game. It's a bottom 10 mark in the league over the last 5 weeks. 22nd in the league over the course of the season. So I don't think it's necessary to force a power play stack here. Wilson, Strome, Protas coming in with positive leverage at 15,700. I think that's the direction I would go. I'd be tempted to throw a defenseman on the blue line. We'll talk defenseman at the end of the show, but whether it's Chychrun, whether it's Carlson, whether you want to use a cheap guy like Roy or Sandin, Washington's offense really flows through their defensemen quite heavily. So I think I would add in a defenseman to the stack, but certainly I think Washington has two playable lines. Ovechkin and McMichael doesn't really interest me terribly here. I think for me, it'd be Wilson, Strome, Protas. And again, if you want to take out Protas and put in one of the power play guys, fill your boots. But for me, I just like that even strength line, 15,700. They're not a heavy target of mine at only a 4% top two stack and 15,700. But I do think they're playable at that price. So Washington, I guess we have them listed as Washington 2. Washington 2 for me in this game is what I like best. I really only like the Washington side overall. All right, moving along. Nashville going into Minnesota. Nashville 2.1 total. Minnesota with a 4 total. Oh boy. Nashville's moved Stamkos to the top line. Not a big sample with him there, only 65 minutes, getting towards 65 minutes. 68 shot attempts, 4.4 expected goals per 60. Philip Forsberg, 3.4 shots and 11 points over his last 10 games. That's not bad. 16,200. They're not expensive, right? They are very playable at that price. It's not as if Washington or Minnesota's second line, that Ryan Johansson, he hasn't played in the NHL for a while. That Marcus Johansson line has been elite defensively. 2.5 expected goals against per 60 is about league average for that Minnesota shutdown line. So I don't mind Nashville one. I think for me, it's got to be MME only. Like, they have a low total. They're on the road on a 12-game slate, facing a Minnesota team that doesn't take many penalties. They added Quinn Hughes, not really a big sample. I think it's only been 5 games with him. So we'll see what it looks like after 10 or 15 games, but Jonas Brodin back in the lineup. They have Jared Spurgeon, they have most of their defensemen back. I don't mind Nashville 16,200, but when you look in that price range, you do have the Carolina top line that we talked about earlier. We do have the Dallas line, only $1,000 more expensive, that we talked about earlier, with similarly very low ownership. and a much higher total. So I think I'm just kind of out on Nashville here. On the Minnesota side, Nashville is taking a lot of penalties. The penalty kill is good, but they still are taking 3.5 penalties per game. It's the third highest rate in the league. Over the last 5 weeks, over the course of the season, they are 9th by time shorthanded per game. Even though their penalty kill has been good of late, they're giving up so many power plays that they're worse than league average by power play goals against per game. The Minnesota power play, 9.9 expected goals per 60 with Jack Hughes. That's a lot better than what they were doing before. The question is just what to do with Minnesota because they do have their lines broken up, right? Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Hartman, top line, 17,400. Boldy, Eriksson, Johansson, second line, 17,200. You could say take off Hartman, put in Eriksson, make it a power play stack, but then you're playing a Minnesota power play stack without Matt Boldy. Do you want to take off Marcus Johansson and add Kaprizov to the second line and make that your stack? I think you can do that. Make it a Boldy, Eriksson, Kaprizov stack. At that point, you're looking at a line that's 22,100. So do you really want to play that? If anything, I would probably go to Kaprizov, Zuccarello, and Hartman, and this is why. They tend to get secondary matchups against Nashville. Once you get past that Nashville top line with this lineup, like you're looking at like Eric Holla and Michael Bunting, you're looking at Fedor Svechkov, Tyson Jost. Like there's just not much to worry about from a defensive perspective once you get past the Ryan O'Reilly, Philip Forsberg duo. And they're not even great defensively anyway. For me, it would be Minnesota 1. If you want to take off Hartman and put in Eriksson and make it more of a power play stack, I think you can do that. But again, it's not like Nashville has a bad penalty kill. They actually have a good one, and it's a really, really expensive stack to make on a slate this big. I would be content just going Kaprizov, Hartman, Zuccarello, and Kaprizov and Hartman this season, 62 shot attempts, 3.8 expected goals per 60 in their time together. That line, those three guys, like at the low end, Hartman will play 18 minutes, Kaprizov at the high end playing around 22 plus. So tons of ice time, secondary matchups, been really good together at 5-on-5 this season. I like Kaprizov, Zuccarello, and Hartman the best in this game. All right, moving along. Philadelphia going into Chicago. Philly, 3 total. Chicago, 2.7 total, believe it or not. Philadelphia played last night, started Dan Vladar. That means Sam Ersson likely starting tonight. That might be why Chicago has a 2.7 total, despite no Connor Bedard and Frank Nazar. Chicago might be getting Nick Foligno back tonight. Teuvo Teravainen didn't practice yesterday, but he's expected to play. Top line of Bertuzzi, Donato, Burakovsky. Second line, I guess, would probably be Dickinson, Mikheyev, Foligno, and they'll be used in a shutdown role against the Zegras line. I have no interest in Green, Teravainen, and more. Green and Teravainen have terrible numbers together this season. Now, I was looking at Tyler Bertuzzi and Andre Burakovsky. Nearly 55 minutes together this season without Connor Bedard for Bertuzzi and Burakovsky. 62 shot attempts, 2.8 expected goals per 60. Those are decent offensive numbers. I don't think they're going to have a very good power play without Connor Bedard, but they're still scoring 9.6 goals per 60 minutes without him. The Philadelphia penalty kill has been bottom 10 in the league over the last 5 weeks, middle of the league over the course of the entire season. Philly's taking a fair number of penalties as well. 3.2 per game over the last 5 weeks is the 7th most in the league. Over the course of the season, 3.1 per game. It's worse than league average. So, I'm not running out to play Chicago without Bedard and Nazar in the lineup, but that line of Bertuzzi, Burakovsky, Donato is 11,200. There are only so many, guys that can play minutes here tonight. Like, I do think they're going to have to play some reasonable minutes. The power play's still been good. Obviously not anywhere near as good without Bedard, but still been good without him. 11,200, 2.3% top two stack. 4.8% ownership for Bertuzzi, Burakovsky, Donato. I don't mind that, actually. Just because 11,200, I imagine they're going to have to get a fair amount of ice time. You're going to get Bertuzzi and Burakovsky on the top power play together. They're going to get, those secondary, tertiary matchups against the Flyers. I think they're fine, honestly. Even on a slate like this, it's a 2.7 total, and they're priced as a cheap filler at home against Sam Ersson. So honestly, don't mind Chicago 1 here. It's the only line that I really have any interest in on the Chicago side. On the Flyers side, Tippett, Couturier, Barkey, 11,300, Michkov, Cates, Brink, 10,900, both with a 0.7% top two stack. I do think both are playable. For me, I'd be tempted to go back, just straight up go back to the Zegers, Konechny, Dvorak line. 15,100, 1.4% top two stack, 0.6% ownership. Now, the reason I say I'm kind of tempted to go back to them is that that quote shutdown line of Jason Dickinson and Ilya Mikheyev really has not been good together this season. Nearly 210 minutes together. 2.5 expected goals against, 3.1 actual goals against per 60, both below average defensive numbers. I think it's a fine matchup for that Philadelphia top line of Zegers, Konechny, Dvorak. Obviously, they've been good together this season. 3.5 expected goals since being united. Even Konechny has 11 points in his last 10 games with 28 shots on goal. Those guys are all skating 17 to 20 minutes. Even Dvorak at the low end is at 17 minutes a game. I think Flyers top line is what I like best in this game, but I do think Philly 1 and Chicago 1 are both playable. Chicago 1 at a cheap filler price, going to get good minutes facing Sam Ersson at home with the Flyers on a road back-to-back, I think is not a bad spot. So I don't mind Chicago 1 if you need a filler here tonight. All right, let's move along. Utah with a 2 total going into Colorado. Colorado's a 4.4. I imagine that's going to look somewhat different, probably something like 2.2 for Utah, 4.1 for Colorado. Either way, Colorado massive favorites here tonight. Obviously, Colorado has the second highest top two stack on the night at 15.3%. 5.9% ownership. Gabriel Landeskog on the top line now makes it 21,600. With Landeskog on the top line, Colorado 86 shot attempts, 4.5 expected goals per 60. Those guys are all skating 19 to 23 minutes a game. Obviously, McKinnon at the high end with 23 minutes. Gabriel Landeskog, his last 12 games, he's averaging over 3 shots per game. He's got 10 points in that span. Colorado power play is about league average with Landeskog. Now, that might sound like a slap in the face, but they're well below league average without him. He's been a difference maker for them with a man advantage. Utah is taking their fair share of penalties. 3.1 per game is tied for the 10th most in the league over the last 5 weeks. Colorado good at drawing power plays. I don't mind Colorado 1 here tonight, 21,600, just because they do get so much ice time. I typically don't play, I say it all the time, I typically don't play like those $21,000, $22,000, $23,000 lines on slates this big. But where those guys skate 19 to 23 minutes and they're perfectly correlated on a top power play that has gotten better and should get a fair amount of opportunities here tonight with a massive home total, I certainly don't mind Colorado 1 here tonight. They have the second highest top two stack on the board. They're one of the best stacks on the night. It's just a matter if you want to pay up for them. But, we have highlighted some secondary stacks that you might want to play here tonight. We just went over Chicago. We went over a cheap Buffalo line. That Islanders top line is reasonable enough to play. There are some lines later that we'll talk about in the later games. So I really don't mind Colorado 1 here tonight. I'm not in so much on Colorado 2. Brock Nelson and Arturi Lehkonen just do not have good offensive numbers together. Brock is the only guy in the top power play unit. For me, if I'm playing Colorado, it's Colorado 1 or bust. I'm getting all the power play guys on a power play unit that has improved on a 5-on-5 line that's been tremendous this season. Whether it's Landeskog up there, whether it's been Lehkonen up there, it hasn't mattered. As long as it's McKinnon and Natchez, whoever's with them, amongst the elite offensive lines at 5-on-5 in the league. With tons of ice time, I think it's perfectly fine. On the Utah side, kind of tough to get there on a slate like this. The thing is like Landeskog has been about the same as Lehkonen on the top line as offensively. Defensively, 53 shot attempts against, 1.6 expected goals against for Colorado 1 with Landeskog there. Those are great defensive numbers. That's the matchup that Utah 1 is going to get. Utah 1, 17,500, 0.9% ownership. Like, if you get there in your MME or 20 max or something, I guess that's fine. But like Minnesota 1's coming in with under 2.5% ownership. That Florida Bennett line we talked about earlier is only 2.5% ownership. There's really just not a lot. You know, the Montreal top line we talked about earlier is under 2%. Like, there are a lot of lines in that price range that aren't in a brutal defensive matchup coming in with under 1%, 2%, 3% ownership. So, if you want to dip down to Utah 2, because they're basically priced as a filler, Genther, Hayton, and Krause, 13K, 0.8% top 2 stack, 0.3% ownership, getting the secondary matchups from Colorado. I guess that's fine. Utah having such a low total here, I'm not running out to play them. To me, this is a Colorado game. Colorado 1 for me. Do want to mention one thing. I think we have a new promo code. If you do sign up through Stochastic, use the promo code PuckLuck. It's what we're using for our references since everything switched over recently. Just do want to mention that. So if you are signing up for Stochastic, whether it's weekly or monthly, use the promo code PuckLuck. That's the reference for Josh and I and for this NHL show. All right, we have 3 games left. Let's try to get through these. Calgary 2.4 total going into Edmonton. Edmonton has a 4.0 total. Probably status quo for the lines. Obviously, we don't exactly know, but I don't see why anything would have changed. Edmonton coming off a win on Sunday. Calgary had, beat down Vegas the other night as well. So Edmonton's top line of Hyman, Nugent Hopkins, and McDavid is up to over 100 minutes, over 105 minutes actually. 70 shot attempts, 3.8 expected goals per 60. They do have the highest top 2 stack of the night, 17.1% ownership at 21,300. And they're not often used in a shutdown role. I do worry they're going to run into the Michael Backlund line a little bit, but they are typically used against the opposing second lines. So whether they go out against Frost or whether they go out against Kadri, I don't think they honestly really see much of the Backlund line. I think hopefully Edmonton's smart enough not to do that. But they've all been playing 21 to 23 minutes a game over the last 5 games. Connor McDavid over his last 10 games has 46 shots and 26 points. 26 points over his last 10 games. That is kind of absurd. Like, he has as many points as Joel Eriksson Ek. You know what I mean? He has more points than Sam Bennett does this season in his last 10 games. It's just preposterous. A big reason is Edmonton has been drawing more power plays of late, and that is huge for them. They're at 2.9 per game over the last 5 weeks. It's about league average. It's not extreme, but their power play is so good that they're scoring over 1 power play goal per game over their last 16 games. Calgary about league average by time shorthanded. Now, the Calgary penalty kill, it's kind of like the Islanders, where the metrics haven't been great. They're just kind of being saved by their goaltending. The metrics are fine, especially over the last 5 weeks. They're top 5 in the league. But over the course of the season, that Calgary penalty kill, bottom 10 by expected goals against, middle of the league by goals against. This Edmonton power play has just been shredding everybody. I hate to make an Edmonton stack without Leon Draisaitl, So if you want to do just like the McDavid Draisaitl 2-man stack and then be on your way, or McDavid Draisaitl plus Nugent Hopkins or something like that, I think you can do that. It's easily Edmonton one that I like best in this game. On the Calgary side, like I don't really have that much interest in the Flames, generally speaking. But, I think it was on Friday or Saturday, Calgary practiced with Coronado, Huberdeau, and Frost all on the top power play together again. Edmonton's penalty kill really hasn't been anything to, write home about. By expected goals against over the last 5 weeks, they have third worst mark in the league over the course of the season, the fourth worst mark in the league. If their goaltending doesn't hold up, they are pretty susceptible on the penalty kill. Coronado, Huberdeau, Frost, 12,600, 1.7% top two stack, 1.2% top two stack, 0.7% ownership. So you get some positive leverage on a filler stack that is perfectly correlated on the power play and is in a good power play spot. Edmonton's taking a lot of penalties, 3.3 times shorthanded per game over the last 5 weeks. It's the fifth most in the league. Over the course of the season, about league average. Again, a Calgary power play unit perfectly correlated. I think the Coronado Huberdeau Frost line is perfectly playable here as a filler in any kind of lineup. So certainly don't mind getting to what we have listed as Calgary 1, but obviously it's Edmonton 1 that I like best in this game. All right, next game, Seattle going to Los Angeles. Not even worth talking about the Kraken. Los Angeles with a 3.6 total. Kings played last night. Kings lost last night, 3-1 against Columbus. Now, the Kings have a pretty sizable total. Let's see. 1 goal last night, 2 goals the game before, 2 goals the game before that, 1 goal the game before that, 1 goal the game before that, 2 goals the game before. They haven't been scoring very much. Kopitar and Kempe have added Trevor Moore to their line. Now, the Kings did split up their lines late in the game last night, so we might see some different lines at warmups here tonight. It's one reason why I'm not super high on the Kings, aside from them not being able to score. The other is with Trevor Moore on the top line, they're at 2.5 expected goals for per 60. The power play for the Kings is absolutely dreadful. So, like, even though they're facing probably the worst penalty kill in the league, what kind of advantage is it for the Kings if they have arguably the worst power play in the league? And that's not an exaggeration. Over the last 5 weeks, the power play for the Kings is at 10.6%. Over the course of the season, it's at 13.9%. Over those 2 stretches, only the Leafs are worse. If anything in this game, I would just go to Fiala, Byfield, Laferriere, 13,800, 4.6% top 2 stack, 10.8% ownership. They're super chalky. At least they've been able to create well offensively together. 65 shot attempts, 3.1 expected goals per 60. Laferriere over 2 shots per game over his last 11, even if he only has 1 goal. You get some power play time from Fiala. I mean, I guess if you want to go like Kempe, Kopitar, Fiala, make it a power play stack just in the hopes that the Kraken penalty kill falls apart against this terrible Kings power play. But I hate relying on that. I would just go with the better 5-on-5 line, which is Fiala, Byfield, Laferriere. But with all that ownership coming in on them, both the Kings' top 2 lines their ownership is coming in over 2x higher than the top 2 stack. Do I want to play super chalky Kings on a 12-game slate? Honestly, I think I'd rather play Joey Decord. So kind of just out on this game in general. Do keep an eye on Vince Dunn. He was hurt last night, took a big hit in the third period, left the game. So the Kraken may be without both Dunn and Montour. It is one of those games that's lining up for the Kings to finally break out offensively. It's what worries me. Is like, the Kraken are back-to-back on the road, probably missing their top 2 defensemen. They have the worst penalty kill in the NHL. It's one of those games that Kings should be able to put up 4 or 5 goals, but I hate relying on them to actually do that. All right, final game. San Jose Sharks have a 2 total going into Vegas. Vegas has a 4.1 total. Potagen Stoner says, good luck tonight. Merry Christmas to all. Merry Christmas, man. And again, thanks for all the support. Certainly appreciate it. Enjoy the holiday break. Vegas, Mitch Marner, Mark Stone, Ivan Barbashev, likely top line. Marner and Stone, 115 minutes together this season. 65 shot attempts, 3.2 expected goals per 60. Marner and Stone both on the top power play. Here's the thing. Over the last 2 years, without Jack Eichel, the Vegas top power play unit is still at 12.1 expected goals per 60. Goals per 60 still over 10. Like, they've still been really good. Not as good without Eichel. It's kind of like that Chicago and Connor Bedard thing where they're obviously better with Bedard. Chicago is. Vegas is better with Eichel on the power play, but they're still pretty good without them. San Jose does take their fair share of penalties, 3.1 times shorthanded per game over the last 5 weeks. It's worse than league average. Over the course of the entire season, the Sharks, 3.2 times shorthanded per game, again, worse than league average. I hate playing Vegas without Mark Stone and especially without Shea Theodore, but at 15,900, those top guys are going to get 19 to 20, 19, 20, 22 minutes, Stone and Marner anyway. 8.5% top 2 stack, 12.7% ownership. Like, ownership higher than top 2 stack, but it's not extreme. I think you can take out Barbashev and put in one of Dorofeev or Hurdle and make it more of a power play stack. I'm not super concerned whether they go out against the San Jose top line or the San Jose second line. I'm not really that concerned about the matchup here. I really do like Vegas 1. I think they're in a really good spot. I think Marner and Stone have been really good. They have been really good together at 5-on-5 this season. I'm not really concerned about any of the matchups from the San Jose side. So for me, it's Marner, Stone, Barbashev. I'd be tempted to take off Barbashev and put in one of Hurdle, Dorofeev and make it more of a power play stack. I like them better than just going to Vegas 2, just because Vegas 2 is coming in with all that ownership. Over 20% ownership at 14,300. Like, that's just a pass for me. So for me, Vegas 1 in this game. On the Vegas side, again, if you want to take out Barbashev, make it more of a power play stack, you can. On the San Jose side, both mid-price lines, but they have a really, really low total. The San Jose top power play is still struggling because they won't take Klingberg off of it. It's not like they're coming in with no ownership, like 3.3% ownership against 3.3% top 2 stack for the Celebrini line, more ownership than top 2 stack for the second line. If we're looking at like 0.5% or 1% ownership or something and you get good leverage, I think that's one thing where you're not getting any positive leverage on the Sharks here. They have one of the lowest totals on the board on the road with a bad power play against a Vegas team that doesn't take penalties. Vegas, fewest times shorthanded per game over the last 5 weeks, second fewest time shorthanded per game over the course of the season. I don't know. I'm just out on San Jose. Like I said, if they're coming in with lower ownership, that'd be one thing, but a very low total on the road. It's not like they're super cheap either. Like, these aren't like true like $11,000 filler stacks, like 15,500. Like, it's the same price as like the Tom Wilson, Dylan Strome Protas line going up against the Rangers. It's not far off that Marner, Stone, Barbashev line at 15,900. The Philly top line of Zegras, Konechny, Dvorak going up against Chicago. Like, I just think there are just other lines in that price range. So I'm out on the Sharks. I'm in on Vegas. For me, it's Vegas 1. And again, if you want to take out Barbashev, feel free to do it. All right, goalies. Top of the board for me is Philip Gustafsson. He's in a really good home matchup here against Nashville. If you look at projections, Gustafsson's coming in second here tonight behind Blackwood. I think Wedgwood might get the start, but whether it's Blackwood or Wedgwood, Colorado's going to be at the top with Gustafsson. So certainly don't mind Gustafsson here. Logan Thompson also stuck out to me. This might be famous last words. I'm really not concerned about him getting lit up against the Rangers. He has the third highest projection here tonight, so I don't mind Logan Thompson. So for me, it's Gustafsson, Thompson, and then Scott Wedgwood. For the cheaper goalies, I don't mind Spencer Knight here. He has 1.44 fantasy points per $1,000. I believe it's the most of any goalie priced under 7,600 here tonight. Jacob Markstrom is at the top for goalie 7,600 or less. So Markstrom and Knight would be 1 and 2 in some order, depending on how much savings you need. Also, shut out Joey Daccord. 7,200. He doesn't have a good projection, but the LA Kings have a real tough time of scoring, and the Kings have a terrible power play, and the one major weakness for the Kraken is the penalty kill. So if the Kraken can not fall apart on the PK, I think Daccord could have a good night. So for me, it goes Knight, Markstrom, Daccord for the cheap goalies. On the blue line, I don't think it's going to be any surprise here, but Evan Bouchard is the top of the board for Edmonton with that huge total at home against Calgary. Cale Makar is right behind him. Bouchard has the higher point per dollar value. I think Makar and Bouchard are 1 and 2 in some order. Jake Sanderson in a really good home matchup, still getting a lot of ice time, 6,600 for Ottawa. I think he's playable as well. I also do like Quinn Hughes. He doesn't have a strong point per dollar value, but it's a really good home matchup with a big total for the Wild, and his price is crept under $7K. In the mid-price range, Mackenzie Weegar under $6K, I think makes sense. Lane Hudson, I think, is fine for Montreal in their matchup tonight against Boston at 5,500. Matthew Schaefer for the Islanders. I don't really like the Islanders in general, but he's fine at 5,800. I will be honest, that 5 to 6K range, I think, is kind of a dead zone. I don't mind Weegar, but that's really basically it. For me, it's once you get under 5K. Darnell Nurse, I think, for Edmonton at an even 4K makes a lot of sense. Thomas Chabot for Ottawa in a really good home matchup against Buffalo for 4,200. Noah Hannafin getting top power play time for Vegas at home for 4,500. Seth Jones getting top power play time for Florida against a Carolina team missing Jarvis and Slavin at 4,400. Thomas Harley on the road against Detroit at an even 4K, I think, is very playable. Charlie McAvoy at 4,900 at home against Montreal. Under 4K, there's a lot of guys I do like here. Matthias Ekholm for Edmonton, Brent Burns in Colorado, Jonas Brodin for Minnesota, Matt Roy in Washington, Sean Walker for Carolina, Artem Zub for Ottawa, Artem Levshunov for Chicago. He's even been getting 21, 22 minutes a game. And Cam York for the Flyers. Under 3K, I think Riker Evans is an interesting name here because, without Dunn and Montour for Seattle, I think Evans not only is going to be getting top power play time, but he's probably going to have to get just a lot of ice time overall. Same thing with Adam Larson, though he's 3,200. Jalen Chatfield's probably going to play over 20 minutes for Carolina with no Slavin in the lineup here tonight. Sam Malinsky in a really good home matchup for Colorado. Rasmus Sandin, good home matchup for Washington. Caden Korchak, in the games since Shea Theodore got hurt, has been playing over 20 minutes a game. He's only 2,800 for Vegas. Yan Kuznetsov still playing over 20 minutes a game for Calgary. Mario Ferraro might have to block a lot of shots here tonight. He's under 3K going up against Vegas. And Alex Vlasic for Chicago. If you don't want to play Levshunov, Vlasic at 2,700, I think, is playable here tonight. All right, that'll do it for the Saturday show. Again, we had to do this early because I am traveling to go visit family for the holidays. NFL show is coming up here in 10 minutes. There'll be lots of news to share throughout the day. I'm sure people will be sharing it. I'll be trying to get into the Discord probably sometime after supper before lock. Thank you, everybody, for all your patience over the last couple of weeks as we've been changing the site around, as there's been some changes here on the NHL show. Really appreciate everybody's support. Again, promo code PuckLuck if you're signing up for a weekly or monthly. any type of subscription over at Stochastic. Again, last show before the holiday break, 3 days off for the NHL, looking to be back on Saturday. Really appreciate the support, everybody. Happy holidays. Stay safe out there. Let's go and win some money tonight. Good luck. Hat trick pick, last one before the break, Mark Stone. Good luck tonight, everyone.